What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined on this Halloween by my co-host, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how was your spooky weekend, man?
Very, very spooky going up into Western New York. Tread lightly, way out there.
Woo! What were we for Halloween this year?
I was Chris Pine from the Don't Worry Darling premiere at Venice. Spitgate incarnate.
Did you and Adam Mahalik, not friend of the show, who
No, hater.
Yeah, make sure you beep that name out. Who went as Harry Styles for this couple's costume? Did you guys reenact the spit?
We actually didn't. We just tried to make the pose. We should have made like a TikTok of it, to be honest. But
yeah,
we were content with what we did with the costumes. So good enough. And you, of course, did a tried and true couple's costume classic.
Dave, I'm not much of a Halloween person, and basically
the other part of this equation is
exactly the instructions I give my wife every year. Well, I guess this is the first year as my wife, but my partner every year are I will do a costume if I don't put a lot of effort into it. And Han Solo is about as low effort as it gets when you put on a Henley and a vest that looks nothing like Han Solo's outfit. So
tunic,
but it's people know who you are when you're next to someone dressed up as Princess Leia with the hair and everything. So
yes,
the costume was recognizable. I was comfortable, and no effort went in. So pretty successful all around. I mean, I got a cute little dog who got to be a little Chewbacca. So who doesn't hate that?
There you go.
Anyways, now that we've moved past our amazing Halloween experience, which I feel like I'm growing out of Halloween now, man. I don't know if I'm just getting
interesting.
Old. You don't feel that way?
I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I think it's fun if you can try and do something original. Like obviously, like I think it's lame if you just like, oh, let me like order the Ted Lasso jumper from Spirit Halloween and just put that on. Like, fine, whatever. But like, if you like, I think piecing together costumes or whether they're current or classics, I think that's still fun to do and cool. But I don't have any kids to trick or treat with, so it's really just that.
That is a big part of the equation. So, anyways, if you want to hear more about our Halloween content, hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, where you can also listen to all of our takes on albums and music, which we're going to be talking about at the top here, as well as some movies and some television, some big TV drops this past week. But Dave, we're going to start at a place that we haven't started in a long time with an album that I think we're this divided on, which is Waiting to Spill, the second album from the Backseat Lovers, the saviors of Utah rock, which who knows what that scene was really like from the good old days of I don't even know Jurgenman out there. But the Backseat Lovers came onto my radar, and I was the one that wanted to talk about this album mostly today. Back in probably late last year. A friend of the show, Andrew Richmond, turned me on to this band, and this is a band he likes a lot. And their album, When We Were Friends, came out in 2019, their debut album. And I started seeing all the concert and the festival, and Backseat Lovers were like way higher up than I had expected. And so I was intrigued. I was like, these guys must be getting some popularity or some notoriety. And sure enough, I think that they're a pretty well-known indie band at this point. So when I saw that they were preparing to drop an album, I was very interested to see what this was going to be. If this was going to level them up in some way, or if this was going to kind of be more of the same, kind of keep them in the same line. And as I listened to When We Were Friends a few times, what stood out to me about their style is just like it's kind of meandering with these like very like strategic swells, and the songs are performative. But you really don't know what direction to go in. Very unpredictable. And I think you've got more of this on this album, although I think they tried to branch out their sound in a couple of different ways to varying degrees of success. So Waiting was a bit of a up and down for me. Really excellent moments and moments that really disappointed me. But I know you didn't really have a great experience with this.
No, I did not care for Waiting to Spill. I was waiting, and The spill never came. The spill never came. Now, I mean, for me, this is just classic, like the indie rock. That's not my bag. I just thought it just kind of droned on and was a bit, as you said, meandering. I just really didn't connect with the vocal performance and was pretty lost with it quite quickly. So, classic, not for me type thing. But I'm glad, you know, congratulations or sorry that happened for you, Pat.
Uh, and I mean, I only think there's a few songs that like felt really not in the right place for me. Something like all the sound is like this like piano tuning, like upbeat type sound for them. And I didn't really like connect with that as much. There's a couple others, like I think it's we're in Snowbank Blues, which is very like tone, has a few like vocal moments where like the singer really like is very sharp, and that kind of like perks you up to the song. It didn't really grab me. But then a few of the songs that really stood out to me, like "Close Your Eyes," feels like a very classic Backseat Lovers song where it's a little slow, but it really picks up to this really like roaring, like swell of a outro, which is really strong and really captures the emotion of the song. And like I think another song that really stuck to me was "Know Your Name," which the first time I listened to it, if you like closed your eyes, you might have been able to like mistake the vocal performance for like a Radiohead B side almost in a way. And that "Know Your Name" has like whirring guitars, a little bit even more like rockish at times. So I thought that was pretty great. And then the third clear standout is the growing thing for me, which is like funkier, has kind of like a back feel in some ways. I really appreciated that they were really like trying something here. I don't know if this is gonna necessarily like propel them into the mainstream in any way. If you like indie rock or if you like the Backseat Lovers, I think you're gonna find quite a lot on here that you do like. So, even though you didn't, like Dave, I'm sorry I made you listen to it. I think there was quite a few things to take away. Is there anything good you can say about this album?
Uh, no, not really. I didn't really like it. Sorry.
No worries. Well, I'm going to be putting us on because I control the playlist onto our now best of 2022 playlist. If you like this album, tell Dave why you're wrong in the comments on YouTube.
Yes, please do.
And another artist we haven't gotten a chance to talk about on this podcast yet, other than is a featured artist on a few albums, is Fred again. Who the last time I remember talking about him was back in July for the Rico Nasty album, of course, and the song "Jungle," which I think both of us thought was a one of the better songs from that. One of the songs that maybe stood out as being unique and uh, as I saw this Fred again album coming out this past weekend, I was like, I at least want to see what this guy's about. And so we checked it out. This is Actual Life 3. It's been kind of his like running theme for his albums in the last 3 years. Is just kind of dropping these 1 year spanning albums called Actual Life 1, 2, and 3. Have you listened to the first two, Dave?
I jumped around a little bit. We actually had talked about Fred again one other time. I think that was the first time I really came aware of him, which would be early 2020 when he produced that Heady One mixtape Gang. He did all those beats, and I was like, oh, this is a guy who's like producer, kind of coming into his own more publicly that way. But then you look under the hood and you're like, oh wait, this guy's been a major like pop producer and songwriter for the last 10 years, working with loads of A-listers. And it's like, oh wow, interesting. Now he's kind of becoming more of a public facing artist in his own right. So was definitely intrigued to check out Fred again solo work here with this Actual Life 3. The first two came out last year, so this is his first big release this year. And I had heard one of his singles leading up to this, which would be Turn on the Lights Again, which is a song he did with Swedish House Mafia featuring Future, because notably that, of course, samples Future's breakout song from a decade ago, Turn on the Lights. And that song, that single is not on Actual Life 3, but it kind of fits that mold, which is this concept of this like heavy sampling nature that Fred is putting into all this music. And I think that's probably what's like the coolest thing to think about with this music is that it's really like targeted specific sampling of like the most random ass shit, like viral TikToks and live covers of songs and all kinds of other stuff. And just the fact that that kind of like approach has been brought into a mainstream house and UK garage release is like pretty cool, honestly.
Yeah, definitely cool. And yeah, you mentioned him working with a bunch of people. I mean, Ed Sheeran probably the biggest name here, but BTS, Stormzy, Eminem has been someone else he's worked with. Sweet House Mafia, like you mentioned, like Rita Ora, George Ezra, Demi
Yep.
Lovato, like, everybody.
A-list.
So this is a big producer, and I agree. I think there's some interesting moments to this. Definitely like fun to hear like the samples and how he kind of works things in. But I also feel like this a lot of times this felt just like pretty classic house vibe to me. And while I think you can put this on and just like, vibe to it and have a good time, I don't know if there's any like tracks on here that I was like, oh man, this is a classic like EDM song, something I'm gonna come back to a lot. I guess maybe like some of the singles. He had 5 singles from this stand out. Something like Delilah, I thought
Mm,
was pretty strong in the
yeah.
beginning. Danielle a little bit later on I liked too, but overall I kind of found it to be I wouldn't say bad, but like just not super memorable.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you found a couple of things that really stood out to you.
Well, yeah, I didn't love all of it either, but I think some of those songs are quite good. Delilah pulled me out of it. In general, the song names, like you look at the track list and it's a lot of like word parentheses word, like noun percent parentheses phrase. And it's like he's kind of describing the song or describing this sample with then like a vocal tick as the rest of the song name. It's kind of cool because it kind of reminds me of like when music leaks and like the not official song names come out because like that's how it was organized on the computer. So, but like it actually kind of makes sense when you're listening to this given the concept. Yeah, I think Delilah is really cool. Just like the way that pull me out of this vocal line in the sample, the way that like loops itself, of course, while the production itself is looping as you'd expect from house music. I thought that was a lot of fun. I liked Nathan Still Breathing as well, and Ilar Shudders as well has a really cool horn, drop in the middle there. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it, yeah, it does kind of come across as what you expect from house music, and I think just the like kind of like audacity to sample like random ass shit in this manner is quite cool. Like he's not even sampling an 070 Shake song; he's sampling the live version of that
Mhm.
song. Like it's quite specific. And in reflecting, like you said, he's had a big year, and he's really kind of come on lately as a solo artist. And if you think about like UK DJs, specifically like UK like club DJs, like obviously like Calvin Harris is British and he's gigantic and like, but like Fred again is like very quickly like trying to follow like Disclosure and like Jamie
Mhm.
XX. Like he's really rising up in terms of like British EDM artists that are crossing over in the United States and just kind
Yeah.
of taking over the scene. So definitely someone to really pay attention to. And even if this is not like the best thing I've ever heard, there's still a lot of like intentionality and like specific touches to this kind of concept that has me quite intrigued for the future. And I would recommend too, check out the YouTube videos, the visualizers of these songs, because it'll often have like the TikTok being sampled if that's one of the songs with a TikTok, and the TikTok will be frozen when it's not actually being sampled. And then when the sample actually comes in on the mix, it'll start playing again in the visualizer. Really nice touch for the YouTube.
That's great. Yeah. You mentioned quite a few songs. I think another one I liked a lot was Clara. That's one of those songs as you think about like the next step for him fame wise is probably going to be being a upper tier EDM act at a festival or the
Mhm.
festival circuit in the next year or so. And I think he already started doing that last year as well. And so you can just see Clara being like one of the closing songs for his set. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes because like you mentioned before, he's worked with a lot of people and it's a big variety. I think he's the kind of guy that seems to be like he's going to be uh, have his stir in a lot of different pots going forward. So
Mhm.
I'm excited to see. moves forward. And I think the exciting thing is like how he's gonna move forward with this like very like English like hip hop sphere that he's in,
Hmm.
Stormzy and uh
Hetty, yeah.
Hetty, and I mean also he's worked with Burner Boy before, so there's like this like very eclectic perspective he can bring to some people that I think could probably use it, like Ed Sheeran, who we know we talked about is like been he seems to be a great collaborator with him, which is
Yeah.
great, but like obviously I think could bring a little bit more edge to him. So we'll
Yeah,
see how
for
it
sure.
goes. Anyways, let's keep it moving to another album I don't think we were expecting to talk about. Division. With this is what their fourth album, I believe.
Yes.
Working on My Karma. Um, yeah, you know, I liked pretty much everything we talked about today. Fred again, probably my least favorite album, but I didn't expect Division to be fighting for my number one spot because I really thought this was really a great album. And
Hmm.
Division as a duo, I don't think we've talked about on the pod before, but
We talked about the
at least
last.
I don't.
We talked about the last one in 2020, Amuse in Her Feelings, which was the first time
Hmm.
we talked about them. But then they also released last year a collab album with Ty Dolla Sign that we did not talk about. So this is their first, uh, just the duo album in 2 years. But as we said at the time, notable group because they are, of course, signed to OVO Sound, signed to Jersey Drake, and as to be expected, are not really super famous or mainstream despite the mainstream attention and and label affiliation that they have, to be expected with Drake signees, as people know. But especially off the last record, like really smooth artists, smooth for smooth male R&B artists. We've talked about male R&B a lot this year with Brent Fayez and Giveon, and of course people know that women really run the scene at this time, so it's a lot of competition. But yeah, I wasn't really expecting it. I think it just kind of like snuck up on me that it was coming out, and I didn't like this one as much as the last time, but I think there are some interesting qualities that they bring. Of course, this is the producer vocalist duo with the producer 1985, who of course did a lot of Drake production with Views. But they haven't really worked with Drake in a while, it seems like, but they're still on the label. But yeah, why'd you like it so much? What stood out to you about the fourth Division album?
I think a few things. I think some of the songs were just really fun. Like right off the bat, last time featuring Blue, I thought was just like a really fun, like captivating track. And you're just kind of bouncing to it. But then you have a few just like I think like really like fun flourishes throughout. I was really surprised, but also like in like the best way possible to get the Take It Slow sample from John Legend and even have
Hmm.
that as like the outro. I thought that was like a nice touch. There's a couple tracks in the second half that I thought were like just really like uh just like probably some of the best R&B that we've listened to this year. And I think overall, my expectations going into this weren't very high. Obviously, I didn't remember much about Musing, so
Right.
I was like, you know, not super taken by them. And I just thought this was some of the smoothest R&B that we've talked about on here. So I was really excited. When you get good R&B, it really, at least for me, sticks with me. So I thought this
Yeah.
was great. But what did you find didn't live up to your expectations from last time?
Yeah, well, speaking of touches, I really love that there's a Jagged Edge feature on this.
Yeah.
Just shout out Jagged Edge, awesome pull. It's really cool to hear stuff like that once in a while. Like I remember back, 4 years ago when Charlie Puth had Boys to Men on voice notes. It's like when you like pull like from the past, like in a manner like that, like a seemingly genuinely loving manner. Really nice to hear. I think for me, the thing that kind of disappointed me about it was one of the singles, of course, got a lot of flack early on, a few weeks back. If I get caught, just because like
Mm.
literally the way the chorus goes, like if I get caught cheating, doesn't mean I still don't love you or whatever it goes. It's like just kind of like an openly toxic thing that we associate negatively in male R&B. And I think the thing with this album for me is that I think the singing voices from the singing voice from Daniel Daly, the vocalist in Division, his voice he's smooth and like he's produced well and like he always sounds good, but like it's not like as like striking a vocal as like the baritone that we know Giveon has. Like it doesn't like wow you like that. And on the other side of things, like the toxic wise, or even just like more inventive music, like the approach doesn't impress me the way Brent Faiyaz does,
Hmm.
you know? So I feel like this is kind of like an in the middle R&B record to me. And given there's a lot of like competition for your time and your ears in R&B right now, it just didn't really live up to I think what I was hoping for, because the last record I did really appreciate just how smooth that was, and my takeaway was that they deserve a much bigger spotlight than they've gotten despite being signed to Drake. And I still agree with that thought, but like I think this one just came in a little short to me.
Man, I'm surprised to hear you say the smooth critique. I felt like this was incredibly smooth. So, something like tired near the end of the album just feels like you're just like gliding like over like silk sheets or something like that. Um, I agree with you on if I get caught. That song in and of itself sounds like it should be on like a 50 Shades soundtrack, so you can just take that out of there. But like I thought something like Don't Take Your Love is like so bouncy and like fun to like just like have in the middle of the album and really takes you to like this different place. Then you kind of get back to like the more traditional type sound. Something like Hating is uh a little bit more traditional, I guess, like this that vocal loop is a bit distinguished. But then, like I said, like Take It Slow, I think is an inspired like use of that piano, like
Yeah.
to like really take that and kind of like tone it up, but also would like loop it around a little bit, bring in the drums, and then have John Legend on the outro. I guess maybe that was just like cool to get that like cleared to do that. Also, a nice cosign from John Legend to allow that, I'd say. But yeah, and I agree that the Jagged Edge sample was cool too. But
Yeah. I mean, this
some good
album
stuff.
was like executively produced by Jermaine Dupri, like Jagged Edge, not as mainstream or prolific as he once was, but still like big deal to have Jermaine
Yeah.
Dupri working on your stuff uh, in that way. That as much as he was, of course, making or co-producing every song. So yeah, I think for me, it's just like I actually had like higher expectations after the last record, and this one just didn't quite match that for me. But I don't think it's bad or anything like that. Um, yeah, I mean, we talked about R&B, I think, a lot more the last year or two than we have prior to that. I just there's more and more stuff happening that's interesting. Whether it's a Jasmine Sullivan, whether it's a Brent Faiyaz, whoever it might be, there's a lot going on. I think that's really great for the genre. So the fact that you have so much melody in hip hop, like that's kind of like the default sound right now. But R&B can still be its own separate thing and hasn't been like put off in the corner or just ignored. Like R&B's come like a really long way in the last 10 years after really hitting a dip. So I think Division definitely helping the cause. So I'm sure people that are fans of Division will be into this one.
Well, we'll probably add a song to our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify, so follow there. Let's wrap up music today though with Smino, Love for Rent. It's been a few years since we talked about Smino, 2018 Noir. I guess did we talk about the mixtape in 2019? I can't remember.
Yeah, there's a surprise mixtape on in 2020. She already decided, I believe it
Yeah.
was, which is a classic mixtape, not on digital streaming platforms. You got to go get that the old-fashioned way, which was really cool. And then you listen to it and say, oh, it's a real mixtape with samples and
Mhm.
freestyles and stuff, so it makes sense. So yeah, it's still been a few years for Smino, but I think he's been a pretty consistent feature in the past few years, as he by no means is like a mainstream artist, but I think he's pretty well known and established as a you know singular artist in hip hop right now. And a lot of anticipation I think for the next proper Smino solo album, and I was definitely anticipating Love for Rent, and I think it definitely gives you a lot of those qualities that people have come to expect from Smino, and uh, definitely a lot of interesting things about it, because I think he's become a really interesting voice in his own regard. But I mean, how do you feel about about Love for Ren, because I think this one is a bit different from Noir in terms of the Smino of it all. Like his performance definitely went in a different direction, I think.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty fun listen. I mean, I think he's doing a lot, right? So because he's doing so much, not everything is going to have the same batting average. But uh, my main takeaway, and I had kind of forgotten this from reviewing Smino projects, and I think you don't really get this when you get a Smino feature, is how much you can sound like Mac Miller at times, which it just like really throws me off. Like sometimes his vocal performance just it sounded just like a Mac Miller sample or something like that. But beyond that, I think that he sounds like he was really like inspired to go for a certain type of style or sound and didn't fully like commit and execute, and like so it the album I think is like almost in this like, oh wow, he's really like elevating to some sort of artistic level, but then doesn't quite go, and I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
we're a bit of a blue ball type situation, I'd say. How did you feel though? Did you have that same experience?
Yeah, honestly, I think he commits to a direction. I just think he almost overdid it. Like,
Ah.
I don't think I would expect to say this, but I think it's like too much soul on this one.
Hmm.
Like Smino with Black Swan, with Noir, with the mixtape, had established himself as a unique artist from the Midwest, familiar to the Chicago hip hop scene, not from Chicago, but close by, of course. But bringing in like Midwest sounds and then bringing in, of course, the Southern sounds everybody knows. And like there was a unique blend. But on top of being like a pretty fun rapper in that regional orbit, he also had like these real soul sensibilities. And on Love for Rent, I think he like really dives into that soul stuff, Like he sings on this album more than he raps, it feels like. And I actually like it sometimes when he like really sings because I think there's some really cool moments, like the chorus on 90 Proof, the single with J. Cole. Like the high notes he hits on that chorus, it's both catchy, but it's just like straight up like sung chorus. But for me, it's like I just think this almost lacks some of the bite I kind of wanted from it because like there was just less hip hop on this than there was in the past on his other work, and that's just kind of speaking to my taste and what I wanted to hear. But he does do the soul well. Like it is soulful as fuck. Like there's no doubt about that. And
Hmm.
even if this wasn't quite exactly what I was looking for, like it's pretty clear that like he has taken from a lot of influences, but still kind of brought himself into this music, and that's why he like really stands out. I think as a unique artist within hip hop these days. But I mean, yeah, how did you feel about like the clear dive into soul and neo soul?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if I necessarily like had that stand out to me. I definitely noticed that it was a lot more singing from him. I think I think because of the lack of like choirs consistently, I wasn't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
feeling the soulfulness as much. But I definitely can see what you're saying, and as I'm like thinking back to some songs, like, oh yeah, there's definitely like influence there from soul. I think like maybe for me too, the songs that I found myself gravitating towards most, like a song like Bro Freak with Doechii and Fat Man Scoop, like that song almost feels like it was like a he was trying to make a Good Kid, Mad City record. And a few times on this we get like moments. I mean, he even has the song called Ol' Ass Kendrick. So like I feel like there's a lot of moments where he's trying to like pull in these like it definitely is soulful, more like jazzy influences to like bring about I think a bit more emotion, and I think also like some variety and some danciness to the album. And I think for me, I was kind of leaning more into that perspective. So I'm trying to process as we talk. I mean, as I'm also like looking through here and thinking about his like uh features, like the ones that I think everybody's going to be talking about, J. Cole for sure. I mean, that track already has like 60 million plays on Spotify, so legit single there. But um I don't know if any of them really stood out to me other than like obviously
Hmm.
Lil Uzi, and I mean Uzi is just so much himself. It's like I don't know, that
Yeah.
didn't feel soulful to me either. But I get what you're saying now that you said it. Just I'm trying to like make sense of it now. I can't believe I missed it. Really.
Yeah, no, that's all good. The Uzi feature is definitely fun, and to me, kind of like highlights. It's like, oh wow, listen to Uzi like really fitting into this vibe of Love for Rent, but still being Uzi, still rapping, and he's been on a great feature run lately. But like
Mhm.
Smino, like I think No L's stood out to me in terms of like the flow from Smino there. Like that's one where I was like, yeah, it's still pretty hip hop. That's still familiar to some of his older work. But yeah, I mean, I think to me, I would probably have to gravitate towards stuff like Blue Billy, where you hear like
Mm,
this blatant harmonization from Smino with
yeah.
his vocals, and like often harmonizing with himself and like layering in stuff like that. Um, and moving forward, I'm actually quite curious to hear like what is next for him, because it seems like he's clearly going down this path, where there is less blatant rapping coming from him, and I do think he does this well enough that there is definitely room to keep going down this road. But like I said, it just kind of perhaps just threw me for a loop a little bit to hear like such of like a strong departure from what I was more accustomed to expecting from him. And like most of his features too are still pretty hip hop leaning, you know. But
Yeah.
he did make it work for the most part, I think, on this.
Yeah, I mean, even a song like Defibrillator, right, which I think speaks to that soulfulness that you're talking about. When he raps, he can still fucking bring it. And so it's like, uh, if this is him really leaning into this as like a career arc or more so just for the album, I'm not sure, but he seems to he seems to be wanting to push himself as an artist, which is really
Mm,
cool. And he's still
mhm.
like what in his 20s, so he's got a lot of room to grow still. So I'm excited to see what's next for him. Do you have like one track that really just like grabbed you? You mentioned Blue
Actually,
Billy.
yeah, Smino's actually 31. Look at that.
Oh, he's
I
an old man.
I think 90 proof just really stands out. Like I
Yeah.
love the Smino performance, and then you also have a really strong Jekyll feature verse tacked in there as well. Like it works really well. Like I said, Blue Billy's good. Noel's Pudgy with Uzi. Um, yeah, I think there's plenty to like.
Yeah, definitely lots of like. So we'll be adding a track or two to our Nostalgia Best 2020 playlist. Go follow there, stay up to date with all the music that we like. But Dave, when you can get Jessica Chastain and the Golden Boy of Hollywood together to make a thriller horror movie, true crime horror movie, you got to do it, right? That's what Netflix did with The Good Nurse. What'd you think? You enjoy this one?
Honestly, yeah, I had a solid time with The Good Nurse. It's not a movie that I think will wow you for any one thing, but it's just pretty solid, pretty competent, familiar as well. But I didn't really mind the familiarity of it, which is like you said, a standard kind of true crime dramatization thriller. Doesn't quite lean into the thriller elements as much as I would have liked, kind of stays more down the middle instead. But still pretty enjoyable, I think, to me to be with Jessica Chastain, be with Namdi Asamoah and Noah Emmerich, the police officers, and watch them trying to get the bad guy, who of course is Eddie Redmayne's character. So yeah, it's not, it doesn't reinvent the wheel really at all, but I thought it was pretty solid, pretty tight at the same time.
Namdi Asamoah. Didn't think we were going to be talking about him in a movie,
Rising actor.
fiction movie. Definitely a rising actor. I mean, I thought he was all right in this. I mean, he has
Yeah,
the big scene where he screams at the hospital director to,
yeah, Kim Dickens.
you know what you're doing. Um, but really, this is like a Chastain Redmayne showcase, and I mean, there was a lot going on. Uh, I think I think some of the stuff with Jessica Chastain and her health, while I understand why they wanted to like fold that in to kind of like add this layer to their friendship, but also like the like back dealings and why Jessica Chastain might
Hmm.
protect him more. It didn't really make sense how like at one point this like heart thing could potentially kill her. She's like having like a almost a heart attack
Yeah.
like after work, and then there's times when she's like at near the end of the movie like running or like doing something like exerting yourself a lot. It's like, oh nope, this heart thing is just not there anymore. That was like something I was like, this just feels so like folded in for like I guess like plot development. But I think where I felt most let down by this actually is Redmayne, right? Because
Yeah.
while I understand that this is supposed to be just like a very like sly, under the radar like serial killer, him playing Charles Cullen was just like barely intimidating at all. There were a few very tense scenes, obviously, but even like when Jessica Chastain has figured all this out and she comes home and he's just like in her home with her kids, I didn't like feel scared. I didn't like feel
Yeah.
tension that like Eddie Redmayne was gonna like hurt these kids. I was like, it's just like a babysitter there. Like, and maybe that's the point. Like, he wasn't a scary dude, but he did these awful things. But I feel like for this movie, the way that they were playing him up was like he's like this like terrible monster, and you don't really get a sense of intimidation from him at all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree about that. And I think just if the movie was conceived a little differently, it'd just be more interesting. Like imagine like what this story would have been if it was part of Mindhunter, you know?
Mm.
Obviously that's a high bar to put on any movie, but like I think you could have made it more intriguing if you as you get to the threat of Cullen, the threat of this serial killer who people don't even know is part of a killing spree. Like there's no one knows anything, right? And that aspect, that fear, that tension of these murders being committed and no one knowing that they're connected, that unfortunately just doesn't really have any momentum in the movie. And like you said, there's not a whole lot of fear associated with the Redmayne performance. And for me, like I actually thought like that it starts off quite strongly, but I think where I kind of got lost with Eddie is at the end when he has been caught and he kind of like is exposed for how he really is and showing that he has like mental health issues of some kind, you know. But I don't know, like it felt a bit like more caricature when you watch Eddie just like pounding his cuffed fist on the table for like a minute straight and like refusing to speak to the police, refusing to speak about anything he had done. Like I don't know, like it just wasn't as convincing as I needed it to be. But at the same time, I just kind of enjoyed going through the predictable motions, but going through the motions of the story because I don't actually like true crime documentary series or movies at all. I'd rather watch a dramatization of it.
Mm.
That's more compelling to me. So that's why I still like appreciate this because I think it's pretty solid, you know. But
No,
obviously,
I completely agree.
if the filmmaking was more higher minded and the screenplay was a bit wittier, it probably could have been more intriguing. But for a solid down the middle version of something like this, I was still pretty satisfied.
Yeah, I think you aren't going to be putting this on like every year around Halloween to watch something spooky. It's the sort of thing where it's like, all right, you watch this once, maybe on like a rainy day, you'll put it on again in the background. But it's a competent like psychological thriller, but just there are better ones out there. Chastain, I think, is pretty good. She's always pretty good, which
Hmm.
is like her like bar, basically her low bar. Um, and I think I just kind of found myself being like, I don't know why Jessica Chastain keeps taking these sorts of roles. Like, I just want her to be doing like better stuff, but I guess you're not always going to be doing the upper echelon stuff unless you're like like Leo or something like
Right.
that. So
She did just win an Oscar. She's allowed one
true,
of these.
yeah, and she was in not Marriage
Scenes
Story,
from a
Scenes from a
Marriage.
Marriage.
Yep.
So like she's been doing this sort of stuff. So absolutely get that check. Also pretty easy for her. Felt like she could have been sleepwalking through a lot of this. So yeah, I don't
Right.
blame her. But
Yeah. I mean, also Noah Emmerich as one of the police officers, like just doing the Americans again.
exactly,
Walk in the
it was
park for
great.
him.
Yeah, and Kim Dickens also just like
Yep.
you know sleepwalking as well. But it all came together to be pretty good. So
Yeah.
I think
Speaking of Kim Dickens, I would have loved more of the like hospitals cover up aspect
completely
of it.
agree.
All these hospitals independently like making their own like business decisions to hide their association with Cullen. Like that was just complete untapped potential, I
Mhm.
think, in terms of like dramatic material. Alas.
It was a good 20 minutes of the movie too, and I could have just used so much more of that and kind of less of less of Redmayne just being quiet and weird. But it's a movie that I think is like fine. It's passable. On your letterbox list, Dave, it'll probably be in like the 30s or 40s. You said that. So,
Hmm.
anyways, why don't we switch gears? Something that I think might be a little bit higher, which is All Quiet on the Western Front, the 2022 adaptation of the classic novel from Eric Maria Remarque. Um, Dave, I mean, if I had to just give you like my initial thoughts after finishing this movie, it's that, man, war is fucking stupid, and the fact that we continue to engage in it is just like
Yeah.
ridiculous.
The mission statement, the thesis of All Quiet on the Western Front, just as strong 100 years later. It would seem to be effective with you. Yeah, I agree. I think it's obviously anti-war novel adapted multiple times. Of course, most famously in 1930 to film, which was the third Best Picture winner, lest we forget, anti-war movie. And I think this one, 2022, All Quiet on the Western Front, definitely hits just as hard, and you have those same takeaways, and it's unfortunately just as prescient and relevant and thought-provoking today as it would have been, in 1930. And in a sense, that's a depressing thing to think about, but yeah, I think this was a really compelling adaptation, and I think a big part of that is this is a German adaptation, and it's the official German submission for Best International Feature Film at the Oscars this year, so stay tuned if it does get nominated. But the reason I think this is a high level adaptation is that the filmmaking is quite top notch with this. You have a really effective, memorable score. You have, I think, really high production values. And it's quite convincing. We've come a long way from the 1930 version, which of course was in black and white. This is a bit further along, and it doesn't have like the gimmicky flourishes of 1917, but this version of 1917, World War One, still I think some pretty impressive camera work and lighting and blocking and all that. Like the message is still strong, and the picture is really vibrant. Right, there's no punches pulled with this version.
Yeah, this is probably the most brutal depiction of war I can remember. I mean, that thing, I mean, right up there with Saving Private Ryan, like opening scene, um, just absolutely gutting a lot of it, and a true testament to the set design on this, the execution of all the trenches, and just like the battlefields looked so realistic. Yeah, and the action scenes felt like you were really in these battles and like up close and personal for a lot of it. The scene where Paul stabs the guy in the crater or the
Hmm.
trench wherever they are, and then like shoves the mud in his mouth and tries to save him was just like I just wanted to get out of that scene so badly. I didn't fast forward, but like I was like I might just have to like move past this. It's too brutal to watch, and uh, I, war movies, a lot of times I think we're like so desensitized to them because they've been so
Yeah.
commercialized in Hollywood and played up for entertainment. But this one is one where it really makes your stomach turn quite a few times to see the scenes play out. And like you said, that's kind of the point of the movie, but and of the book. But I can't remember a depiction that really made me feel quite like this afterwards.
Right, and I think right off the jump too, you're just thrown right into that, like watching uniforms being pulled off corpses to then be washed so they can be given to the fresh recruits that are refilling the cannon fodder at the front. It's just really in your face for its darkness and just how bluntly graphic this war was, as I think most people would know at this point. Um, and to immediately follow that scene up with your introduction to Paul and his buddies in northern Germany, these 17, 18-year-old young men who have this kind of rah patriotism and enthusiasm for the glory of war and uh, fighting for the fatherland fighting for Germany, even though the war has been going on for several years and we are in the phase where the Germans are on the back foot and in the process of losing, the Germans and their allies. So to kind of like see that energy, that youthful exuberance thrown into the meat grinder right away it is quite effective. And like they do such a good job of like highlighting the absolute brutality and just terrible life that was being in the trenches, and I think World War I is a war that hasn't been as glamorized on the screen as you said, right? Like growing up as a kid, like I love watching war movies. I love Saving Private Ryan, but I liked it for the action because I was a dumb male, like it's a little different. And obviously we just had 1917 come out at the end of 2019, but that's a movie which, as the filmmaking highlights front and center, doesn't keep you in the trench.
Mhm.
All Quiet on the Western Front is more grounded and I think more realistic, more to the average experience. And of course, this is the German experience. But yeah, I just think like going through all like the various scenes and watching everything play out, like if you whether you've seen the original or not, or you've read the novel, nothing might wow you per se, but like I think it's just a really high level version of this story. And I mean, shout out Felix Kammerer, who plays Paul. This is his first role, like very, very impressive to carry the movie in this manner. The biggest actor to the average viewer, of course, would be Daniel Bruhl, a fellow German, who plays actually a real person,
Matthias, yeah,
Matthias
Erzberger.
Erzberger, who was a uh, politician who helped with the armistice. And I believe that's a change where like the showing the armistice angle and watching that come to be and the war ending. I don't believe that's actually in the other movie or the book. I believe the book is strictly first person, but I actually liked that kind of other side of the thing because I think it actually does a really good job of showing like the political decision making at this time while directly contrasting that with just the never-ending death that was this war at this time, So I thought it was pretty effective to have that added in, and of course, Brule is a great actor.
Yeah, Brule is great, and I think he's really brings a nice presence to this. You mentioned like the like way that you love Saving Private Ryan because you were like a dumb male, but like think about how that like embodies the way Paul is in this
Hmm.
movie. He goes in and he's told that this is how your father's gonna be proud of you, and like they're so excited when they go in, like immediately just like hating the experience. And it's completely brutal. They show you everything. I mean, you watch his friend get set on fire by the flamethrower right
Hmm.
after he surrenders. You see the his buddy who gets shot in the leg take the fork and jam it into his jugular in order to kill himself because he doesn't want to live to be a
Right.
cripple after the war. You just see all this play out, and it's so brutal and unsettling. And it's I think similar to like the experience of World War I, but I think all war in general, like there's these moments of like joy and these moments of like triumph. You think about like when they find out that the armistice is coming and they go to steal some eggs to celebrate, and possibly a hen, and then pretty quickly his buddy is shot by the farm kid, and another person lost unnecessarily. And then they're all looking forward to ending, and immediately you get that speech from who was that, Prop, was that the
Uh,
general?
yeah, like the commander at the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all just like, no, like we're not going. And they actually show one of the people get shot because he fought back. It's just, man, just
Right.
freaking brutal the whole time. Incredibly well done though. I was so impressed with like the actual like filmmaking aspect of it.
Yeah, totally. So I definitely am rooting for this to get one of those Oscar noms for international feature film category. Did you watch it in German with subtitles? Did you go to the dub? Obviously, a Netflix movie has myriad language options.
So it started off just my settings started off with the British English, and then I switched to the dub for a while. and then I was like, I'm probably not going to continue following this, so I switched back to the American English to finish it out. So I was kind of like back and forth on it. What about you?
Interesting. I stuck to German with subtitles. I'm a big fan of. I'd rather read the subtitles and hear the real acting than like
Hmm.
hear somebody else voice act and watch someone act next to that. Like that's just how I've always felt about it. But it's not exactly like a dialogue heavy film,
No,
so it's probably not as big a deal as it is with some other stuff. But obviously, it's most important to watch it in some manner. So it doesn't really matter how you watch it, I suppose. But yeah, definitely, definitely a success and just a kind of a casual Netflix drop at the start of the awards run. You know, big
crazy.
lucky for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And crazy to get two award competitors from Netflix on the same weekend, The Good Nurse and All Quiet on the Western Front. So
Exactly.
why don't we keep moving forward though to the smaller screen? I guess we watched both these on the smaller screen because of Netflix, but Tales of the Jedi, the newest animated Star Wars product from Disney on Disney Plus. Dave, you were excited for this one, right?
I was, yeah. This was only announced earlier this year at Star Wars Celebration. Unexpected, but more Star Wars animation in the Clone Wars animation style from Dave Filoni, of course, the creator of Clone Wars. Really, the way it was pitched, as this kind of like more anthology, smaller scope series. It's like, it's almost like more Clone Wars, truthfully. And obviously, Clone Wars has a rabid and loyal fan base. To get anything close to more Clone Wars is very welcome. But I actually was quite impressed with, I think, the kind of like narrative aims of Tales of the Jedi, which is a series of 6 shorts, and it's only about 90 minutes in total runtime. So definitely different than Clone Wars, different than Star Wars Visions. It's a new kind of uh, product or type of content, TV content from them. But these like dueling paths where you have this Ahsoka Tano storyline and this Count Dooku storyline, and like the thematic through line that they are able to weave in over the course of these again short running episodes. I was pretty impressed with that, and more than anything, now Tales of the Jedi as like a anthology animated Star Wars property is quite intriguing in terms of the other possibilities that are still out there to be used in this way. So, if this is the only version of Tales of the Jedi and we don't get any more, still pretty content. But yeah, in general, I was anticipating this, but still surprised actually with what we did get.
Yeah, I was not expecting. Well, when I saw it was anthology, I guess I hadn't done my research on it, but I wasn't expecting it to be an Ahsoka Count Dooku, like you know, two tales of different Jedi
Mm.
going different directions. And I think similarly, the little I know of Ahsoka's background, from like reading up on it, she also like doesn't totally accept like the Jedi Order, right? And like, so I guess
Yeah,
it's like
she
talking.
leaves the Jedi towards the end of the Clone Wars season 6, and that's why she isn't directly killed in Order 66. More of that's explained in Clone Wars as well. But yeah, she leaves the Order uh, before Anakin's turn. So that was obviously a big thing, and of course, people know Count Dooku leaves the Order as well and joins up with Palpy.
And so I think it makes sense to follow them, just not what I expected at all. And I think you also get some just like cool moments with some characters that people want to spend more time with, right? You get the some moments with young Qui Gon as well as older Qui Gon as we see him in Phantom Menace.
Hmm.
Actually, right before Phantom Menace,
Yeah,
you see Yaddle voiced by Bryce Dallas Howard, which I mean didn't expect to be getting some Yaddle like fill in here, but it's pretty cool to like get her story built out a little bit more, and to not have her just be like female Yoda, to actually be like a real character, is kind of
speak
nice.
on it, bro. That is the highlight of Tales of the Jedi right there, Episode 4. Um, Even separating the Yaddle aspect aside for a second, that I think is so compelling to the Star Wars fan, which is to get an episode of TV centered directly around the events of the Phantom Menace. That is so cool. And we love that shit. And that was what was great about some of Clone Wars season 7 was because it was in and around Revenge of the Sith. Like it feels like more movie in a sense, and it's just so compelling to a fan for in that regard. And on top of that, to give Yaddle a canon death, because Yaddle was her fate was unknown in the new canon. She had a different death in the expanded universe. So like to find a way to actually give her a really compelling and effective death, which also adds to Dooku's story as well, adds to the Phantom Menace. Like, is not something I would have expected from this series, but like I think it's just it's an amazing like creative decision to do something like that with one small short.
Completely agree. I was really surprised, but welcome to see that. And you also get a little bit more time with like Anakin, and Obi-Wan has a brief cameo, just kind of like remarking on Ahsoka's like powers and abilities, which I thought was really nice. And yeah, I found myself enjoying it. I mean, I think I certainly was way more interested in the Ahsoka stuff than the Count Dooku stuff. Just like Dooku is such a buzzkill to be with, you know, whether it's in that first episode when he's just like he's so dry, you know,
Yeah,
like as a character, it's not as fun. And I guess Ahsoka is not necessarily like a barrel of laughs, but I think just based on her allegiances and some of the characters she's interacting with, I was more interested. But like seeing Dooku basically being like bad cop with Qui-Gon and bad cop with Mace Windu back to back was kind of fun to watch
yeah,
for sure.
totally. And yeah, like I said, episode 4, like literally seeing Dooku like sneak into the archives and delete Kamino, which of course is a direct setup for what happens 10 years later in Attack of the Clones. Like that's just compelling to me as a hardcore fan. Um, a lot of jokes online. Yaddle speaks normal English, speaks normal basics, so Yoda is just a weirdo for the way he
Yep.
speaks. I guess is the takeaway because it doesn't seem to be a species thing that he picked up, through his scientific existence. That was also I think unexpected comedy.
I think it's the sort of thing where people have different dialects and ways of speaking, even on the in the United States. So yeah,
Yep,
sometimes people are
we'll
going to
go
talk
with that.
different. That's all right.
Yep,
I still still
totally.
still love my guy Yoda. Come on.
Yeah, a lot of chatter online about doing like a Tales of the Sith, like sister sequel series to Tales of the Jedi, and upon further review, seeing like Palpatine like kill off Darth Plagueis, which also happens right around Phantom Menace, like there is some juicy material along that, because I think anything like that that like colors in the story we do know is just fun, So like I said,
For
episode 4
sure.
is pretty probably my highlight there, and the last one, episode 6 with Ahsoka, retreads a little bit of ground from one of the novels, but um, also pretty compelling. So in general, I was just impressed with how much they were able to like I think achieve dramatically with the short runtime, given that Clone Wars in and of itself is a pretty uh, self-contained and effective long-form story. Like the fact that you could somehow add to that in such a short amount of time is my main takeaway. And now looking ahead, Star Wars Visions is coming back in 2023, so Star Wars animation, perhaps doesn't get quite as much of the fanfare as the live action Disney Plus series, but still, I think a important component to that Star Wars storytelling.
Completely agree. And just to circle back to your point about the short form, I mean, this feels like something they can just like roll out for any story that they want to, just build out these characters in these short forms. I mean, people want it. And I think this is getting a lot of praise. So why not,
Right.
Uh,
Totally. And I think it's pretty clear like what their aims are with this, where Tales of the Jedi, I think, is not super comprehensible to people that don't have pretty strong Star Wars knowledge and Clone Wars knowledge. Like the way like episodes stop and start, like, you know, you might not know that was young Qui-Gon with Dooku if you don't know that at the time Dooku is his master, right? Like he doesn't say Qui-Gon for quite some time in the
till the
episode,
very
right?
end.
Yeah. So like it doesn't hold your hand to a new fan. This is really like for the faithful.
Yeah.
So but they make so much stuff that I don't think there's an issue with making stuff just for the hardcore. So hope to see it continue in some way.
Absolutely. Well, let's wrap up today talking about season 2 of The White Lotus, which dropped its first episode last night on HBO. And man, I mean, White Lotus, surprise of last year.
It's 2020,
Mike, that was 2020. Jeez, really? I guess it's like
right?
in my mind because we've been talking about it so much with all the Emmy nominations and wins recently. So no, season 1 was
Oh,
2021.
yeah,
July
yeah. Sorry,
2021.
you're right. Yep,
Um,
back to
so
back.
it has been just like the surprise of last year, and I think we don't need to go too much into why it was great. You can go listen to our past reviews, but mostly just Mike White's ability to really take down the, the classism and the ignorance of the upper class as they interact in this environment that forces them to really like confront their fakeness and also their like fake activism. I think is just really like what drew a lot of people to it,
Hmm.
but just like so many smart critiques. It's an incredibly well written show, and
Yeah,
season
but
two, I mean,
also bringing you humor, and
yes.
and compelling drama too. Like it was like the whole package, and also because it was unexpected out of nowhere, it made it even that much more satisfying and enjoyable.
And of course, dynamite cast doesn't hurt. And so when Mike White says, "Yeah, I'll write a season 2, and we're going to go to Italy, and the cast is going to be just as stacked," how could you not be in for this, right? And so episode 1 dropped. Dave, are we just right back in the saddle with White Lotus?
We're back, baby.
Yeah.
We're so back.
Yep.
The one connecting piece between seasons as we're at a new White Lotus location. Goodbye Hawaii, hello Italy, as you said, is of course Jennifer Coolidge and John Grease's characters who become partners in the season one. They are back and as guests at this new other White Lotus, and everyone else is new. And I think that's kind of like the perfect way to frame this as an anthology where you don't need any connective tissue at all. But in hindsight, as HBO, Mike White, Casey Bloys, everyone figured out, White Lotus actually turns out this is perfect anthology format because you can just run back the premise of this show at a new location with a new cast, with a new like plot per se, but the narrative aims are more or less going to be the same in terms of the critique of the wealthy and all that social commentary, as you said. So there's really no reason to, I think, not be in because the cast is still stacked, and now we get to be in a new, beautiful location instead. Like, what's not to like, if you ask me?
Yeah, I was totally taken by this first episode, and not only do I love a lot of the cast here, right? You have Aubrey Plaza, who I think was the person I was by far most excited for in all of this, but obviously you get Jennifer Coolidge back, you have F. Murray Abraham in here, you have the guy from The Sopranos. I'm forgetting his Michael
Mike?
Imperioli. Like
Yes.
you get like just so many great people. Also, just want to say, did you recognize the voice of Michael Imperioli's wife when he makes the call and she like curses him out?
No, I did not. Who was that?
Laura Dern. They got
Oh,
fucking Laura Dern to just
oh
do
my
this like
god.
voice cameo. Just
Oh my
unreal,
god.
like
Is there
unreal stuff.
perhaps she could be a guest actor in one episode?
I don't know, but if we
Doesn't
get her
seem
on
like
like,
it the way these characters are, but
yeah,
it's in
I,
play
I,
maybe.
it would be great. Honestly, I would just love it if she's like the center of a season 3. Eventually, like put Laura Dern in the show. I think she'd be great. But
Hmm.
I think just how he sets up this season with so many like pretty overt but like really smart like character pairings, right? So you have Aubrey Plaza, Theo James,
Yep.
Megan Fahey, and who's the other guy?
Aubrey Plaza's partner. Yeah, what
Yeah,
is his name?
Will is it Will
Ethan.
Sharp? Yeah, Will
Will
Sharp.
Sharp. Yes, as Ethan.
So you have those four, and it's like this very like woke, like over intellectual couple with this like beautiful kind of like dumb but
Aloof.
like yeah happy couple. They're a foursome, and those dynamics were by far my favorite part of the first episode. But then you get the three generations of the Sicilian, Italian family
We
with
don't speak Italian though.
yeah,
The
with
DeGrassos.
yeah, Abraham, Adam DeMarco, and Imperioli. Um, then you have Jennifer Coolidge, but like her dynamic with Haley Lou Richardson as her
Yeah. Assistant.
yeah, like Gen Z assistant who's like has to like get out of her sight because Greece doesn't want her around. Just like all set up so beautifully, and then of course you have the thing with like the prostitutes and just kind of how they're just kind of like lurking around trying to sneak in. It's all
Yeah.
just like really smart, and it's like you can kind of see where some of these themes are probably going to go, but you're just along for the ride because it's just so smart, and the way that they like do the commentary and the dialogue is just so funny. It's really impressive. What were your favorite like
Right.
plot points in the first episode?
Yeah, I think you really nailed it there. And I mean, also now we have Sabrina Impacciatori as Valentina, who is
Yeah.
the manager of this version of the White Lotus, of course, familiar to the Murray Bartlett character from season one, same kind of
Mhm.
idea. And seeing like inner hotel, like hotel operations hijinks already starting in season one with the local uh sex workers trying to sneak in when they're not allowed in. Like you're already getting that. Like it's kind of giving you all that stuff. And we see Theo James's meat right away
Oh
in
my
that scene with
god.
Aubrey
Do you think
Plaza.
that was really his meat? I don't think so.
I'm sure it was a prosthetic,
Yeah.
but I mean that it was packing for sure. And I mean Theo James, Aubrey Plaza, two beautiful people. So we I think most of us are in fact rooting to see that happen, which it seems like that's the way it's going. But and we haven't even seen Tom Hollander yet, who is also on this season, uh, coming soon, I imagine. But I think just like all those threads and like how these characters are going to intersect is which is so compelling because the commentary is going to be strong because like Mike White has that wit as a writer and a creator. And like season one, we did start in media res with another dead body. So you have that like underlying like something is going to go wrong. You don't know what's going to go wrong kind of
Mhm.
thing. Don't know if you necessarily need that for this show to like set you up, but I don't know if it detracts either. Um,
Mhm.
I was trying to figure out who was the one who like set up the date with the sex worker, the local woman. And I
Right.
was like, they make it kind of obvious that it could be Michael Imperioli. I was wondering if it might be F. Murray Abraham because he's also like this overtly like womanizing, creepy old man.
Mhm.
So not that that's like really needs to be a mystery, but I was just like trying to see like, are they gonna throw a curveball? Is it gonna be Theo James? Like who is it? But it ends up being Imperioli. Um, we'll see what kind of character he is because you have him. They definitely characterize him a certain way via that Laura Dern phone call, but his kind of personality thus far hasn't exactly been that either. So there's obviously a lot going on there.
Mhm.
How do you like being with Tanya and Greg, with Jennifer Coolidge and John Grease? Like for me, like the Tanya character, which I think broadly was like pretty well liked from season one. I never really liked the presence all that much just because like the way that character is portrayed by Coolidge is like that like kind of like aloof, like I don't know what's going on, I'm like ignorant of how I affect the world kind of character is just like
Mhm.
so annoying to me. Whereas like I'd rather watch like like shitty entitled like rich people instead because that's like more fun to be around, even as you also detest that kind of attitude too. I don't know, that's just my taste, but like do you like being with them? Like obviously their relationship seems to be more on the rocks now in
Yeah.
season two than it was obviously as a budding out of new romance in season one.
Yeah, I like being with Coolidge more than Grease. Grease is just like a total scumbag, and like it seems like he's up to no good here, like taking the calls and
Right.
like pushing her out. But I do enjoy like some of
The
the
macaroons.
bits, yeah, the macaroon thing. But even like when she's like, "Yeah, we have to have sex right now," and he's like, "Well, I gotta go. I have swamp crotch. I gotta go wash this out," and she's like, "Ah, he's always thinking of me." Like it's just like such funny like little moments. I mean, overall, they are not nearly like my top like two or three most interesting parts of the show, but it's like a nice like through line. And I think Coolidge particularly is supposed to like embody this like ultra wealthy like think that they're like do gooder and like woke type person who's actually just like totally oblivious and actually doing
Yeah.
more harm than good, which is like we got it in the first season. I don't know if we needed that through line to the second season, but I have so much faith in Mike White that I assume we're going to get something more from this eventually.
Yeah.
I gotta say, at the beginning, I thought I was gonna hate Portia, and seeing how much I liked Haley Lou Richardson by the end, and how much I'm rooting for her and the young son there, Albie,
Yep.
Adam DeMarco to get together. I'm excited to see where that goes, and I didn't expect to feel that way. So
Yeah.
definitely intriguing.
Well, and also for me, it gives me another reason to like dislike Tanya because now she's
Mhm.
like treating her assistant terribly, and her
Right.
assistant is also played by someone super likable and also great in Haley Lou Richardson. So, yeah, I mean they got just as much talent this time around, and now it's a new mix. We've stirred the pot, and we're gonna get a new taste of the White Lotus. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing everything happen. Also, like speaking to like the commentary, right? Like I think perhaps a little new this time around was kind of the attitude that the show has about sex work early on, where it's like I forget her name, but the one who's more
Lucia.
experienced, she is kind of speaking about it in a very, I think, modern, but also like more like feminist point of view, where you know, why not do this if this is something I want to do with my life? I'll take advantage of my looks while I'm young and get all that money and do the things I want to do in life. Like seeing that like presented, I think so matter of factly like that, I think is pretty refreshing because it's both a tasteful but also I think relatively modern and realistic viewpoint of sex work, and it was I think nice to see that kind of setting up a character that otherwise could have been a bit more familiar or rote.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool actually, and I'm interested to see how they play out, especially because so Lucia is the sex worker, but Lucia's friend Mia, is kind of like there, but like doesn't want to be doing sex work, kind of is looking for something more. So feels like there's something larger going to be coming down the pipeline with her. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the how we see Theo James's hog or
Yeah.
supposedly his hog in the first episode. What do you think he was trying to do in that scene? Like, do you think he was like coming on to Aubrey Plaza? Do you think that was like a kind of like putting the like sexual abuse type stuff right in her face? Like, what? How did you make sense of it?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best read on it because they're kind of setting up this dude, early on. Like he makes reference to lawsuits that have no merit, and of course, Albert Plaza's character is a attorney who works in that sort of harassment like litigation. So like it's a amazingly blunt contrast right away. So yeah, I'd have to imagine that like that guy is just kind of a entitled prick, and that's something he would do, which would be more or less exposing himself to someone. It's not the most graphic thing you could do in that sort of thing, but I mean, it's still inappropriate. So yeah, um, I would not be surprised to see that through line continued
Mhm.
because right now it's like just a one off, but I think, we'll obviously see more with those two. And who knows, maybe they genuinely come onto each other and it becomes even more messy and thorny and unethical. I think that's what's so compelling about this show is that you can like feel multiple ways about characters that you're spending time with.
Totally. I'm actually interested to see if because I guess how happy Megan Fahey is right at the very beginning, right, and how she's like, "Oh, you're gonna love this place." If Theo James cheats on her, I can't imagine she would feel this happy. So I'm interested to see like either what if she's aware of it, maybe she's the one who like chooses to like maybe not be in the relationship or something like that. I don't know. Like there's got to be something with her, but I'm interested to see where that goes for sure. And also, it's nice to see Aubrey Plaza just like getting a bigger role in something. We've seen her kind of have these like bit roles after Parks and Rec, and I think a larger role, obviously, in the Marvel
Happiest
show with
season.
Dan Stevens. Well, Happy Season, she's really just like a cameo type of role, but something like a superhero show. I'm totally blanking on at the moment. Dan Stevens, but uh,
Legion.
Legion, yes, thanks.
Yeah.
So but it's nice to see her like I think being like put front and center because I think that she definitely has more chops than she's given the credit
Yeah,
for.
I agree. And like she's been carrying like independent films pretty consistently the past few years. Like we talked about Emily the Criminal earlier this year, for
Yeah.
example. But like this is obviously very high profile. It's the nine
Yes.
o'clock Sunday night HBO show, HBO drama that just had a million Emmy nominations. Like this is very high profile for her, and you know, deserving of her talent. To get this kind of role. She's great and also proven to be much more multifaceted than
Mhm.
people might have thought watching her playing a part in Parks and Rec. So people know that at this point, but now ideally more people will know that because we'll get to see her front and center on this show.
Can't wait. Any last thoughts? Are you ready to wrap up for this week?
Let's wrap it up.
So what we got for next week, Dave?
Yeah, so we got a loaded movie week coming up. The movies are coming fast and furious. We'll be talking about Banshees of Inisherin, which is out in theaters, as well as James Gray's Armageddon Time, which is coming out on Friday. And then there's a few streaming movies as well. The other Harry Styles movie, My Policeman, hits Amazon. And the long-awaited Jennifer Lawrence vehicle, Causeway, hits Apple. On the music front, three low-profile acts: Phoenix, Joji, Drake, and 21 Savage. We'll see if we can make time for them. And also, our 2023 Grammy nomination predictions are coming because the Grammy nominations are right around the corner in early November.
Man, a lot of stuff to talk about next week. Hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Go to the link tree in our Twitter, which is at nostalgiapod, and follow the podcast any way you'd like to there. And go to our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist on Spotify and give us a follow there as well. We'll catch you next week. Peace out.